Okay, so we're starting here in line 386 with atque hic, right? Atque meaning and, hic meaning here. And then we have a present participle exultans, and you can tell that from the ns at the end, right? So exultans means exulting. And then you have this ablative noun, sukessu, that's a fourth declension ablative singular ending. So exulting in success, and in passions, so animis is ablative plural, so you've got exulting in success and passions. And we know that our subject is going to be somebody singular because of the singular participle exultans, and here at the end of the line is our singular subject, choroibus. So, and here exulting in success and passions, choroibus says, inquit. And then we go into direct speech. O socii, so socii is vocative plural, O comrades. And then he says, qua prima, qua meaning where in this instance, and prima meaning first. So where first, fortune, fortuna, shows, that's the main verb, monstrat, shows, the iter, so the object is iter, the path or journey, perhaps road in this instance, and then salutis is genitive singular, meaning of safety. So he says, O comrades, where first fortune shows the road of safety, and where, so that's quaque, and where her right hand, dextra, so that would be the subject, and it would refer to the right hand of fortune as a kind of personified god or goddess. So, and where her right hand shows itself, ostendit se. And then he says, sequamur, let us follow. So that's called a jussive subjunctive. It's when you use the present subjunctive as a way of encouraging someone to do something. So let us follow. If it were indicative, sequimur, it would just mean we follow. But the subjunctive, sequamur, means let us follow. Okay, and then we get immediately after that another present subjunctive with this kind of jussive effect. In other words, let us do something. So mutemus, let us change our klipeos, our shields, accusative plural, and let us aptemus, let us put on the insignia, and then of the Danaans. So danaum is genitive plural of the Danaans. And now nobis here, nobis is dative of nos, so it means to or for us. So aptemus nobis is sort of let us fit to ourselves, put on to ourselves, or in English we might just say put on the emblems of the Danaans. So just quickly, so that we understand what's going on here. So the Trojans, right, Aeneas and his friends, have come across a Greek man, Androgeos, and Androgeos mistakes them for fellow Greeks. Androgeos thinks that they're fellow Greeks. And this mistake on Androgeos' part gives the Trojans the upper hand, right? The fact that the Greeks are kind of not on the defensive because they don't realise they're facing their enemies. So the Trojans have just had the upper hand over Androgeos, and this gives one of the Trojans, Choroibus, a good idea. He says, let's put on Greek armor instead of our usual Trojan armor, and that way we'll be able to take lots more Greeks by surprise and kind of defeat them in the same way with the element of surprise that we've just defeated Androgeos. So that's what he's saying. And then he says, dolus, deceit, an virtus, or courage, who, quis, would ask, requirat, so that's subjunctive, so we say would, who would ask, in hoste, in an enemy, or you might say when it comes to an enemy, in plus ablative. So the idea here is whether deceit or courage is needed, who would ask when it comes to an enemy? So this is a very kind of compressed, quite difficult phrase. But what he's basically saying is, he's saying, I've got this plan. I know that it's quite underhand, it's quite deceitful, it's not very brave or honourable, because it basically involves tricking people. But he says, look, these are our enemies we're talking about. We're in a very difficult situation. So who cares if we win by trickery or if we win by courage? The important thing is we have to win. That's the point that he is making. So he then says, they themselves, ipsi, will give, dabunt, future of do, they will give us weapons, arma. And he's being kind of sarcastic here, because of course the Greeks are not going to voluntarily hand over their weapons, but the situation is, right, Androgeos and his Greek friends are lying dead on the floor, so all the Trojans have to do is strip the corpses of the armour, the Greek armour, and put it on. So when Koroiba says they themselves will give us the weapons, he's using a kind of dark humour, I suppose, because he's really talking about stripping armour off Greek corpses. Then we have fatus in line 391. This is a PAP, a perfect active participle, which you get from deponent verbs. So this is the deponent verb for, meaning I say. And so fatus means having spoken. And then sic means thus, or in this way. So having spoken thus. Then, deinde. And then we have to go all the way to induetur for the main verb, which it looks passive. It's kind of deponent, really. It basically means he puts on. He puts on the comantem galeam. Now, galea is a helmet, and comantem is a present participle, and we can basically translate it as plumed. So he puts on the plumed helmet of Androgeos. So androgei is the genitive of Androgeos. He puts on then the plumed helmet of Androgeos and the decorum, the beautiful emblem insigne of the shield, clipei, genitive case. Okay, so he then puts on the plumed helmet of Androgeos and the shield's beautiful emblem, and he fits, accommodat, like accommodate in English, he fits to his side, so lateri is dative singular, he fits to his side, like if you think of the word lateral in English, he fits to his side the argivum ensem. Now, argivus, meaning argive, this is another way of saying Greek, just like Danaan as well, right? These all just mean Greek. So he fits to his side the Greek sword. Ensis means sword. It's a poetic version of gladius, if you like. You might also notice here the V in argivum is written as a U. Don't worry about that. It doesn't matter either way. Some editions of Latin texts like to use V's. Others prefer to use U's. The Romans treated them as the same letter. Okay, so he fits to his side the Argive sword. This action, hoc, this thing, ripeus facit, right? So ripeus does this as well. This action, hoc, ipse Dumas, right? Dimas himself does this. So ripeus does this, Dimas himself does this, and omnis juventus, all the youth, right? Juventus is a singular noun and it refers to kind of young people as a group. So all the youth does this, facit, laeta, happy, right? And laeta is feminine because it agrees with Juventus, which is feminine. And the football team, of course, takes its name from this Latin word. So so Ripius does this, Dimas himself does this, and all the youth does this happily or delighted, because they think this is an excellent plan. Right. After the colon then, in line 395, quisque is the subject, each one of them, each one, armat se, arms himself, with, so now we get an ablative phrase, the recentibus spoliis, the recent or fresh spoils, right? Spoils meaning the armour that's stripped off these dead Greeks. Okay, then we have the next main verb, vadimus, we go on. And then a PPP, perfect passive participle, immixti, mingled, having been mingled, and that's followed by ablative, danais, mingled with the Danaans. And remember, those are the Greeks. So we go on, mingled with the Danaans, by, now numina is ablative, by a divinity. So it's like a god, but a bit vaguer than a god. It's some sort of divine or supernatural power. And if you want, you can add in a kind of participle here. You could say guided by a divinity, which the Latin doesn't have, but in English we probably would have that. Guided by a divinity, haud nostro, not ours, right? Guided by a divinity, not our own. And quae. And then we have a PAP, right? Perfect active participle from a deponent verb, congressi, from congredior, having come together. We concedimus, we join, multa proilia, many battles, per plus accusative, through the caecam noctem, the blind night, literally. Blind in the sense of kind of dark and nobody can see anything, right? So having come together, we join many battles through the blind night. So there's a lot of confusion probably. And, now there's no word for and here in Latin, but in English we would probably include it. We demittimus, we send down, right? De meaning down, mitto, I send. So we send down multos, many, accusative plural, of the Danaans, so Danaum is genitive plural, we send down many of the Danaans to Orcus, right? Orco is dative singular of Orcus. Orcus is basically refers to the god of the underworld, sometimes called Pluto or Hades for the Greeks. So it's as if they're handing over these Greeks to the god of death. In other words, they are killing them. And then in the next sentence, we can start with the subject alii, some, right? Some of the Greeks, diffugiunt, scatter, right? Fugio is I flee, and the D at the beginning, the DI kind of suggests in different directions. So diffugiunt, they scatter, some of them scatter. Ad navis, ad plus accusative. Remember, is as a noun ending in Latin poetry is often equivalent to es. So you can imagine that this is ad naves. Some scatter to the ships, and they petunt, they seek or make for fida litora, trustworthy shores. Cursu is ablative of cursus, with running or with speed. So they make for trustworthy shores with speed. And then after the semicolon, we have pars, right? So another part of them, another group of them. And then we have this ablative phrase, turpi means disgraceful, formidine means terror. So with disgraceful terror, this other pars, they scandunt, they climb. Rursus is an adverb meaning again, they climb again. The ingentem equum, that's the object, they climb again the huge horse. And they conduntur, they literally, they are hidden, it's passive, present passive, or we might say they hide themselves, or just, in English, we might say just they hide, in plus ablative, the nota alvo. Now nota means familiar, notus, or known. And alwo is a womb. Right, now it looks masculine, alwo, it's second declension, but strangely it is actually feminine. So that's why you have no ta in the feminine. So they hide in the familiar womb or belly or stomach. So in other words, they're hiding in the belly of the horse.